Hi everyone, we're just going to finish off the database implementation section by having a little look at the two following SQL statements. We're going to have a little look at deletes and we're going to have a little look at inserts and how these have moved on from National 5. We're also going to have a little look at the word aliases, making sure that we know what that exactly means in terms of readable headings, but also in terms of table aliases. So let's start off with delete. Here's an example that might come across in our games rental database. Dunfermline South shop is closing. We've been asked to write the SQL code to remove the shop and all of its associated stock. Now the delete statement would look like this. So we've got delete from shop and the stock tables or entities, where shop.shopcode equals stock.shopcode. So really important that we're putting the equi-join in, the primary key to foreign key link there, to join shop and stock together. And shop.shopcode equals DUNS. So that's the code for Dunfermline South, which we should already know from our database. Okay. Now you might get asked to write an SQL statement with a delete statement there, or what you might be asked is you might be given a delete statement and asked what impact it has on the table or the database itself. And that's really important, thinking about which different entities within the database would be affected. So you might get something that looks like this. What impact does this have on both the shop entity and the stock entity? So let's look at them both separately. What happens in the shop entity is that the shop with the shop code DUNS is removed from the database. So only one shop is removed from the database. However, in the stock entity, there's a lot more happening, because what happens there is every stock ID or every item of stock in the stock entity table is removed if it has shop code DUNS. Now in real life, if this was a branch, they probably would already be all updated so that they were at different, past to different shops, because you wouldn't just put them on the bin because the shop was closing. But depending on if they're owned by different people, it might be kept, okay? So in this instance, all the stock associated with the shop code DUNS are removed from the stock entity. So there's two different things happening. There's a lot of stuff being removed from the stock entity and only one item being removed from the shop entity, okay? You can delete from one table at a time. You can delete from all four tables at a time. It just depends on what it is that you've been asked to do, okay? But these are the type of statements that you might get asked to write or you might be asked to evaluate. Okay, moving on to the insert statement. So here's an example. Sony have just brought out the new PlayStation 5 console, and we've provided with a free test game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. It's decided that this will be added to the Edinburgh Central store, as it currently is the most profitable. Write the SQL code to insert the game to the stock of the correct shop. Okay, so it's only one game at the moment. We've only got one issue of it. So what we need to do is give it an ID number and add it to the Edinburgh Central store. So the insert statement might look like this. Insert into, so it was delete from, insert into the stock entity. And then what we've got in brackets is all of the fields that we are planning on filling. Now you can be lazy and you can get away with not having the brackets in this instance because we're actually filling out every single attribute within the entity. So as long as you get them in the right order that they're in the database, you can actually leave the first brackets empty there. So this whole section here could be removed for this one, okay? If you are ever entering something into a database where maybe one of the fields or two of the fields aren't required and you're not filling them in, it is really important to list all of the attributes or all of the fields that you're going to be filling in and in the correct order. It's really important that each of these attributes match up with the one below. So we've got stock ID, that's the value that's been inserted, game name, that's the value that's been inserted, shop code, that's the value, so on and so forth, okay? Also, under the values part, which is the second part, anything which is text should be in single or double quotes, as we talked about last time. Anything that is numbers, no need to be in quotes. Anything that's a boolean, no need to be in quotes, okay? Ending off with a semicolon, just like our delete statement, okay? So that's really important. It's not any harm to ever list these fields out, so you'll never get a mark taken off for having them when you don't need them because you're filling in everything. I always just think, for my own peace of mind, it's good to write that in just to remember what I actually need to fill up into the stock table or the table or entity I'm currently looking at. Okay, again, what impact does this have on the database? So let's look at the shop entity. There's actually no impact. The shop already exists. We're just linking to a shop that's already there, so there's nothing added or inserted into the shop entity. In the stock entity, however, we are adding something, okay? We're adding in the stock new item with stock ID PS501, and it's been added to the stock entity with all of its associated information that was required by the database. Okay, so that's what an insert statement looks like. Again, you could be asked to write an insert statement, or you could be asked to evaluate or test one. Okay, so just really important to be able to understand what the SQL is and to be able to remember the kind of layout and the grammar of how to write it down in case you're asked a question. Insert and delete are National 5 and higher, so they're one of the ones that come up less often than update or select, just because update's been updated a bit since National 5. But you could get asked about them, and they are listed specifically in the arrangement, so just make sure that you've kind of watched over this and you've had a little look at some examples, maybe going back to the National 5 appendixes. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about this morning is table aliases. So sometimes when we're creating a large statement of any kind, and this could work with update, insert, select statements of all different kinds. Okay, what you find is you get a statement that looks something like this. That's really, really large, and there's quite a lot of code, quite a lot of text going on there. Okay, and what you can see is we've got 3 tables. We've got 2 equijoins, primary key to foreign key links. We've got sorting happening, we've got selecting happening. And inside there, you can see we've actually got quite a lot of primary keys being used as part of this one. So we're having to do quite a lot of entity.attribute, customer number. Okay, this is where table aliases can come in. So aliases basically just means another name for you. You've maybe heard of it when you're talking about like superheroes, so like Spider-Man, and his alias is Peter Parker, or maybe vice versa, his name is Peter Parker and his alias is Spider-Man. In higher, we have aliases for 2 parts of the topic. We have an aliases for our calculations, so when you do like a count or an average or a min or a max, or just any calculation, and you give it a name, a readable heading, that's known as its alias. So this is the calculation, but it's otherwise known as the number of nights booked by people in July, or something like that. Okay. But table aliases is where we start to give our tables shortened names to make our code more efficient. So basically, to make our coding quicker or more efficient or shorter, we can come up with table aliases. Now, if we take that top SQL statement and we gave it table aliases, the code would change to this. Now, the first thing I want to point out is the from statement. So here you can see from hotel, and then after hotel there's a wee space, and then there's a H. Okay, booking, there's a wee B. Customer, there's a wee C. Now this works really well for this table, database, because they've all got very different names. If we had the other entity, it would be resort, which would be R. That's great. If we're doing this for the game rentals, it wouldn't probably work. We'd have to give them slightly different codes, because obviously shop and stock would both be S. That wouldn't work so well. But anyway, that's something that you can use, right? So when we set this bit up, this from statement, giving them each an individual little name, what that means is we're giving them an alias. So hotel is now going to be known as H, booking is now going to be known as B, customer is now going to be known as C. And then when you look at the rest of the statement, every time you've written customer dot something, you've put C dot something. Every time you've written hotel dot something, you just put H dot something. Every time you write booking dot something, you put B dot something. Okay, now it's not something that I encourage, it's not something that I use a lot, but again, it's something you could get asked a question on, or you could be asked to test or evaluate an SQL statement and say why it wasn't working. So for example, if somebody had used C and H and B all around here, but hadn't actually put these 3 letters in here, the SQL statement wouldn't work, because the table aliases, the other names, hadn't been given, in which case the rest of the SQL statement wouldn't know what h.hotelref meant. It would need to have hotel.hotelref. Okay, and the aliases can be anything that you like. They can be, obviously you don't want to make them longer than the table names themselves, the entity names themselves, but as long as they are meaningful to the coder, it can make things a little bit faster, because obviously the users are never going to actually see this SQL code. They'll be hidden behind buttons and things that they just click to make stuff happen. Okay, so that is table aliases, and that is everything in SQL. So what we're going to do now is have a little look over the AIFL sheet and make sure you know everything for the unit. Okay, speak to you later, guys. Bye.